Ladies and gentlemen, it's time to talk about another extremely important thing because this is quite literally going to be voted on, not by we the people, the citizens of the world, who it is going to be governing and controlling, but rather amongst the private class, as George Carlin would have put it, big club, that we ain't in it. And that is, of course, the puppets, specifically the quote unquote world leaders, the top of the puppet show tree. And of course, a lot of other WEF associated and adjacent corporate figures are going to be voting on. We are going to overview this documentation because it impacts the entire world. It impacts every last one of us living beings on this earth, specifically all of us human beings, of course, and it's going to negatively impact all future lives. This is going to be what we're overviewing, is that exact document they're voting on. This is the final official draft of what is the World Health Organization Pandemic Treaty. This was officially released apparently on March 13th. One thing I want to do in preface right now, just to keep it in our minds and put it in your mind, is the recognition of how often, if at all, have you actually heard and seen any media, certainly in most specifically mainstream media, or, oh, I don't know, your own government and its officials actually mention or even talk about this at all? Have they mentioned that the final draft of the pandemic treaty was released in March? Did they share it with you, their constituents, their people that they're supposed to be the servants of? Did they share that with you? Did they even mention it at all? And if so, how much did they really talk about it? And was it directly about it or not? Did they break it down? Did they give you any important information or details about it? Or was it more of a sales pitch? Because I guess I'll bet you, I know for a fact here in the United States, not a single politician did I see ever mention this, not even a single word, not a peep at any point, including that they're about to vote on this. That's going to seal our fate as people of the world without our permission, as usual, and not without any of our input, as always. Go figure. It's almost as if votes have never counted for anything and they're just formality, just to keep you thinking you actually have a voice and power, which you haven't for the longest time anywhere in the world. But of course, I'm probably just a crazed conspiracy theorist by suggesting such a horrible, clearly false thing. Recalling the Constitution of the World Health Organization, which states that the enjoyment of the highest attainable standard of health is one of the fundamental rights of every human being without distinction of race, religion, political belief, economic, social condition. You wish that was anywhere close to true. Look at these advertising terms. There's sales pitch. Oh my goodness. While reaffirming the principle sovereignty of states. Not reaffirming the sovereignty of states. No, reaffirming the principle, aka the idea, the thought of sovereignty. That's cute. I like how specific and specialized they worded this. Again, you can tell this is just marketing psychology. They're wording it, they're being very careful with how they word it. They're trying to paint a very specific idea and image in your head and trying to sell you on it. Deeply concerned by the gross inequities at national and international levels that hinder timely and equitable access to medical and other coronavirus COVID-19 pandemic related products and the serious shortcomings in pandemic preparedness, recognizing the critical of whole of government and whole of society approaches at country and community levels, and the importance of international, regional, and cross-regional collaboration, coordination, and global solidarity. Look at all these buzzwords, especially DEI buzzwords. DEI buzzwords. Diversity, equity, and inclusion. That's what DEI is. Oh, they gotta hit all of their fucking buzzwords. Ugh, get a fucking buzzword boner up in this bitch. And achieving sustainable improvements in pandemic prevention, preparedness, and response. Recognizing the protection of intellectual property rights is important for the development of new medical products and recalling that intellectual property rights do not and should not prevent member states from taking measures to protect public health, and further recognizing concerns about the effects of intellectual property rights on prices. This is talking about the corporate aspect, aka, oh, I don't know, pick your favorite mega global biopharmaceutical corporation that is just reaming every possible penny out of good old return customers like us back for another needle in the arm, or back for another pill, or back for another this or that. That's what they're referring to, because the IP, intellectual property rights, that's referring to copyrights, that's referring to patents, that's referring to anything that is all about profiting and profitability. ROI, return on investment, like vaccines, obviously. So think of, your Pfizers and your Modernas and your Johnson and Johnsons. Technically, Pfizer is BioNTech, but whatever. Bayer, AstraZeneca, Lilly Miller, so on and so forth. So that's what they're referring to. Oh, this is creepy looking. Recognizing member states' sovereign rights over their genetic, creepy, resources. Your genetics are now resources. That's literally what they're saying with this, by the way. That's literally it. Think of the intellectual property rights, the profitability margin, the making sure you're a repeat customer and all this stuff. That's about profitability. And then that's why, of course, naturally, they're calling it a resource, because that's what it is. Genetic resources, and underscoring the importance of promoting the early, safe, transparent, and rapid sharing of samples and genetic sequences of data of pathogens with pandemic potential, as well as the fair and equitable sharing of benefits arising therefrom, taking into account relevant national and international laws, regulations, obligations, and frameworks. Another thing that this associates, most vaccine manufacturers, and you can confirm this by going to the CDC's website and actually looking at the full documentation behind every single vaccine that is currently out there on the market. That's why they call it a market, because it is a profit margin thing. It's not about your health. It is about profits. That's literally indirect admission, but wait till this video gets taken down. I get a strike for saying that. But that again goes back to the IP thing. Just like saying states, that's nations, governments, rights over their genetic resources. How do they get hands on genetic resources? Yes, they're indirectly, very late, mind you, notice that piece, saying, relating to pathogens and, viruses, diseases, maybe fungi, bacteria, or prions, or whatever. Genetic sequence data means the order of nucleotides found in a molecule of DNA or RNA. Oh, God. This also is like very political, and you can tell it's very political because like they're probably using a political public relations firm to make this, to have written and made this, because it's beating around the bush. They're fluffing it up. They're adding as much fluff and as much buzzword terms and other, not comfort or necessarily subduing terms, but basically things that would calm you down or make you feel more at ease. They're using these things very specifically to tap into that psychology, to make you want to accept it and be like, no, this is fine, this is good, while also trying to distract you and make you kind of slowly mentally and cognitively detach and get kind of like zoned out, because they're being super fluffy about it. They're fluffing up all this other stuff with all these extra words and terms so that they can make it as boring as possible and also as difficult as possible to really genuinely pick out the parts that are actually what they're really saying. But it's also just ambiguous enough that they can say, no. See, that's a misunderstanding, but then probably never correct it, because that's exactly what I guarantee the point of it is. Just like, again, most legislation is, especially in the United States, and I'm sure it is in most other nations in the world. If you actually look beyond the title and that first couple of pages where it's a summary, if you actually look past that, you'll realize it's not about what it says it is. It's actually about all the other stuff inside of it, all the other 900 plus, 1,000 plus, 2,000 plus pages in that one single proposed piece of legislation. Like the TikTok ban was not actually about TikTok at all. It wasn't even about banning TikTok at all. Once you got past that titular and advertising prop piece on the front of it, I believe that was the one that had over 500 pages total. That's how long and deep that document was. And it's because when you really broke it apart, like Thomas Massey of Kentucky did, you realize it was all about censorship. And then not only was it all about censorship, it was also all about further increasing the aggressive and entirely invasive and also violating of literal constitutional amendments in this country, surveillance of us citizens of the US, being able to collect all this excess information, all these other things. The House and the Congress both have their own websites where these documents actually go up. Ironically, I guess they just know that most people would never touch it, would never even as a joke have that thought enter their mind of doing it for shits and giggles, because everybody has like a 3-second attention span these days. And so they know they can get away with it because everybody's going to do that. Nobody's fucking going to do that. And plus they know that none of us have the fucking time. Well, at least the mass majority of us don't have the fucking time to be able to read through it, let alone corroborate and confirm it for ourselves by researching and looking it up ourselves, because they have us in that enslavement system where we're enslaved to the corporate system that this world operates in, right? They know that. So it's even more knowing that full and well that we have no chance to be able to actually back ourselves up or confirm to ourselves what reality and the truth really is by actually looking at what they're really doing behind that cover, behind what they're telling us it is about. TikTok ban's a perfect case of that, because it's not actually about that at all. F. PABs, sequence databases, means publicly accessible databases that meet and agree to legally binding terms of reference that include agreements to notify users of benefit sharing provisions under the PABs system. So in other words, they're trying to basically monopolize the public health alert and agency systems, whether that's VAERS, whether that's Canada's version of VAERS. There's a website there you can literally look at from around the world. You can actually look at verified cases of whatever different diseases it is, whether they're outbreaks, whether they are isolated infections, like it doesn't matter. They're literally logged there. But this basically sounds like they want to monopolize it by creating their own, so that probably they can control the information, they control the narrative, so that they can make sure that certain things do not get out to us, and they can dictate what can and will be allowed for us to be able to see and know about or hear about. Basically, this is like an information control system, I guarantee, is what they're looking for to do by monopolizing it. And probably, because what this really is about, again, is about control, then at that point, probably shutting down those other services because of the fact that it puts them and their profitability under threat, and their control under threat, because it might challenge what they're telling us and what they allow us to know. G, pandemic-related products, means products that are needed for pandemic prevention, preparedness, and response, which may include, without limitation, diagnostics, therapeutics, vaccines, and personal protective equipment, PPE. Again, notice products. Again, it's all about the money. Regional Economic Integration Organization. Start a rap song with that. Means an organization that is composed of several sovereign states, and to which its member states have transferred competence over a range of matters, including the authority to make decisions binding on its member states in respect to those matters. See, here it is, giving over the rights and the control, in this case, over their health systems and their healthcare and their responses and everything, to the World Health Organization. They relinquish all of their rights and their abilities to do anything themselves or to make their own decisions, meaning we, under those nations, are under the WHO's, World Health Organization's, mercy. And do not forget, that means we don't have any rights. We do not elect anybody to the World Health Organization. We the people of the world, the everyday citizens, we have no say in who runs these organizations, who is allowed to be a part of it, who is elected to their boards, who is elected their president, their leaders, or anything. This is also proof that yes, the World Health Organization, under the treaty, or in this case agreement, what the pandemic agreement treaty is saying from the World Health Organization, and thus the World Health Organization itself is saying, is that they are setting themselves up to become a global government that takes complete control and over rights and operations, functions, and decisions of entire countries, and it's their people, under them, which then they have full control and dictate over. And we, therefore, no longer have any rights to stand up for ourselves, to contest it, to have even the freedom to refuse any of their mandates or their rules, to defy them. We have no rights anymore. They're wiped away. We have no personal freedoms or rights when it comes down to our own health and health decisions and our medical decisions and care, because it's been happily handed over to complete control to an organization we have nothing to do with, that then they will have full control over us. And what are we supposed to do? Well, technically, we have no rights. They're gone permanently. We have nothing we can do. We just have to just sit there and shut up and accept it and get reamed up the ass by people we have no ability to do anything. They literally have no accountability to anybody. This is what this is. It's setting themselves up to be able to have no accountability. Everyone has accountability to them, but they don't have accountability to anybody. They would be basically a one world government, starting with health, which is funny because this is basically like what the EU, the European Union, has become. They became that, but in economics and even somewhat militaristically. The EU has tried to take global control and dictation over things like technology, where they've done that with COPPA, and they've done that with other related things like that, where they have enforced what they've decided that their countries in the European Union have to follow. They mandated that the whole world supposedly has to follow suit, and they have to do and follow that law, that charter, that agreement, that ordinance that they implemented as the European Union, even though nobody else has anything to do with them. And for some reason, the world was like, sure. Which makes no sense, because they have no jurisdiction. They have no rights to tell us what to do, or any other governments to do what to do outside of their jurisdiction. But, apparently that's what they became, which is ironic, because that's basically them saying, yeah, we're basically becoming, they have stuff with military now. They're acting like a government. They're not acting like an economic, what do you call that? An economic coalition or economic alliance. Apparently they've taken over what the UN is all about. Because I know the UN basically has little to no funding now, and it's considered a joke pretty much around the world, because there's not only a little to no funding, but there's no real, none of the members are really that active in it. Nobody takes them seriously. So I guess somebody's got to fill the vacuum of control and power, and I guess that was the EU, and now it's going to be the World Health Organization. And again, what people need to understand is that there's a reason why people tie the WEF, the World Economic Forum, to the World Health Organization, and vice versa. The World Health Organization ties back into the World Economic Forum, the WEF. The reason why is because they share each other's members heavily, and a lot of the WEF's people and biggest figures and controlling interests are very much controlling interests of the biopharmaceutical medical industrial complex of the world. They have their hands, and if not themselves, fully engulfed and fully in the whole scheme of making money off of medical products like vaccinations. That includes people like, Bill Gates, a random college dropout programmer who really barely knows how to program, let's be honest. Because, the lie is that, he founded Microsoft and he created Windows, and he didn't. He's a business con man. That's what he is. He's very well known to have been a con man. He actually conned IBM out of one of their first operating systems, and then took that, and then after he basically robbed them of it, as conned them out of it, he went and took it, and then he had Steve Ballmer and Paul Allen, who were the other two guys with him who founded Microsoft, work with him to then code it into what became the first edition of Windows, which I believe technically was DOS. Yeah, Microsoft DOS. That's where DOS came from, and the rest of Windows then got developed off of that. Was from this IBM thing that they slightly altered and expanded on, and boom, after Bill Gates conned him out of it. And he's conned a lot of people out of a lot of things. And he's publicly mentioned two different things. It's literally, there's clips on fucking YouTube you can watch, ironically, unless they've taken them all down and they're constantly doing like hit pieces against those pieces because they can't have that out there because they want people to believe it's a far-right conspiracy theory. But literally, there is clips of him in public, in conventions, in front of hundreds if not thousands of people, cooing and raving about how, when he got invested his first time into vaccine companies and vaccines, that was his biggest and best ROI. ROI means in turn return on investment, aka he invested his money into those corporations who developed them, and he got by far the most profit out of it. That was the time he basically indirectly admitted, oh, I'm all in on vaccines now and the manufacturers, because he immediately realized there's endless potential to maximize profitability off of this concept. And so he wanted to go take it way further than the Rockefellers did, who monopolized modern US medicine. So that's what he did. And ever since then, he's been all about it. He's been trying to like talk like he's a medical professional, and he has literally zero background training and experience in the medical field, and even biopharmaceuticals. But the world listens to him, including the WEF, including all these vaccine manufacturers, and so on and so forth, because again, they are a corporation. At the end of the day, they're all about profits, not about your health, and therefore, of course, they're going to emphasize their biggest shareholders and make sure they cater to their interests before anybody else, because that's all that matters to them, is control, power, and money. And that's it. That's for the proof of that. But he's one of those people who is directly associated with the WEF. He's one of their biggest poster childs and activists, and active members, controlling interests, while he's also, again, like I said, the guy who like everybody looks to, including medical professionals, for advice and for information on pandemic preparedness and vaccinations and developments of vaccines and all these other things, as if he has any qualifications, and he has literally zero. And that's, of course, how it ties back into the World Health Organization. So they're emphasizing intellectual property rights. They're emphasizing, they've actually indirectly mentioned protecting profits and potentially profit sharing. They've mentioned products and product distribution. So acquisition, distribution. They've mentioned, of course, now how they would take complete control over entire countries' medical systems and medical responses and responsibilities and rights and everything else that would go under this agreement directly to them. They've talked about how basically this indirectly, right, where they're talking about how, hey, look at this, we're to start, a public, I can't remember what the V was, system, but basically it's like there, so that it's like theirs, where it's like these publicly accessible databases where you can actually see adverse reactions and deaths caused by vaccinations. You can see the same thing with medications, or you can just see outbreaks. You can see where there's isolated incidents of various different diseases. You can see where you can even track where a new strain of something came up at, right? Or at least was suspected to have been identified. The public aspect of it, which the CDC, the World Health Organization, and so on, do not have anything like that. They do not allow us, the general public, to access this information. They, in fact, want to try to lock it down and keep it away from us. So this is, again, a whole thing. This plays directly into the WEF playbook as well, where it's really just them working together on this. Because the WEF does want a new world order. They want a one world government. Klaus Schwab and John D. Rockefeller, as well as David Rockefeller, were incredibly connected people. They were very much of the same kind of mind, where they wanted to come up with a way to implement a new world order. A lot of people somehow still don't realize that David Rockefeller is the guy who literally funded and had conscripted on behalf of his dad, John Rockefeller, to erect the Georgia Guidestones. And the Georgia Guidestones, in case you didn't know, you didn't actually read them and look at them thoroughly, are literally I believe it's like the 15 rules of the New World Order. And it's not like as some gag. It was really because this dude, John Rockefeller, genuinely wanted a new world order. He talked and he raved about it all the time while he was taking complete control and not monopolizing the agricultural industry, the food industry, and of course, the oil, so petroleum industry, and the biopharmaceutical industry, what would become the biopharmaceutical industry, the medical industry and complex. He monopolized the fuck out of that to maximize profitability and control, to create repeat customers. That was his point. This is how this man operated. Klaus was John D. Rockefeller's protege. That's how close they were. It's just something I wanted to point out because it's very correlated with what we're reading now. Like the further we're getting into this, the more direct they're getting, and the more you can start seeing the connectivity between the reality that this is about their complete control and dictation, and thus the direct correlative to the WEF. Notice they keep using, again, the buzzwords that are very DEI, diversity, equity, inclusion, related terminologies. It's because of the fact that that's another thing that was actually conceived and output and put forth by the World Economic Forum, was the DEI rules and principles and guidebooks. That kind of shit was spat out by them. It helps them perfectly implement their playbook. And so, yeah. And it's funny because, again, this whole DEI stuff, I can make an entire video ranting about that. It's bullshit. If you just fucking observe, you just detach yourself. You just sit back and you watch and listen. You pick this shit up so fast that they are the most predictable fucks in the face of the earth, and that it's just a fucking scheme. It's just a fucking false ass lie that they just cycle through over and over and over again because they know that's all they have to do. They don't actually have to do literally anything. They just plant the seed in society's mind, and everybody takes off and runs with it. And now society is doing it all for them. They're doing all the work. All they have to do is set the seed down, and everybody goes apeshit. And their work is done. They just have to say something. That's just suggest something. Whatever it is. It's this that's the seed being set. And everybody takes off and does all the work for them. Because I know that I saw a post from somebody I follow on Instagram ever since the trucker convoys in Canada, which was Christine Nagel, who is goes by Independent Journalism. She shared something that was obviously very important to know, which was that from May 27th to June 1st, obviously this year, 2024, the world leaders, I like to put air quotes around leaders, obviously, will gather for the World Health Organization's, whose 77th World Health Assembly. And during the gathering, of course, it's expected that the countries involved will, of course, vote on the new legally binding pandemic accord and amendments to the International Health Regulations, IHRs. And what that whole pandemic accord and amendments is of course this whole World Health Organization pandemic agreement or pandemic treaty that we're currently reading. It's in very short order that's set to happen, so that's obviously not a positive thing. Oh man, because again, this is why it bared reference to mention that there's just so much importance on having it in your head of really trying to think and remember when was the last time, if at all, if ever, Have you seen any media you might follow, or media members and figures, mention this? If it's like a genuinely independent, or it's one of those really small ones that unfortunately probably are more right wing that you might follow, then yes, you probably will see it. The more quote unquote left wing it leans, the less likely you're gonna see it. I can guarantee that. And of course, the more mainstream, the bigger it is, the less likely they're gonna touch on that or even mention it at all. So that's why it bears thinking about, because this is such a huge thing where like the entire world is pretty much going to be under the complete mercy and totalitarian dictatorial control of the World Health Organization if it's agreed to, which I'm sure probably will be, unfortunately. And the fact that, again, it's these world leaders that get a vote on it, and we have no say. They're doing it on our behalf, aka we have no rights to be involved in this, even though it's all about our lives, our rights, our freedoms, our rights and freedoms and abilities, our liberties to be able around the world to choose for ourselves what is right and wrong, what we will and will not do, what kind of treatments we will or will not accept, if we will isolate and quarantine or not, if we'll mask or not, whatever the fuck it is, or if we will get a vaccine or not. It doesn't matter. This will take away our ability to have that legal right. We will be punitively punished, and they will probably forcefully make us take these vaccines or whatever the fuck it is that they dictate we have to take. We won't have those rights because our governments are selling our rights and our freedoms away because they're in on it. They don't give a fuck about us. They never have and they never will. And that's the worst part about this. This is almost inevitable. Most nations in the world, if not all of them, will agree to it. That's bad. And the only way I can see it, like I said earlier, that it might be able to at least be postponed and delayed in implementation, or at least they might not fully go all out yet, is if they see there's almost something they might feel at least is at strong high risk of becoming a genuine militancy amongst the average everyday people of the world, us, calling them out on their shit, saying we'll absolutely not accept this, and going like basically threatening to attack them in their lives. They probably will just not care, and they'll probably still do it anyway. I can guarantee they will. It has to take people's recognition of this, the sharing it around, and being like, this has to be stopped, because otherwise we are eternally fucked. And that's horrible. To achieve the objective of the WHO pandemic agreement and to implement its provisions, I did already read that, didn't I? No, I didn't. To implement its provisions, the parties will be guided, inter alia, whatever the fuck that means, that's legalese, by the following. 1. Full respect for the dignity, human rights, and fundamental freedoms, of all persons, and the enjoyment of the highest attainable standard of health of every human being. Solidarity, is another buzzword. I was wondering when that was going to come in. Transparency, which you've never had as an organization, World Health Organization, so shut the fuck up. That's a lie. And accountability, also something you've never had. To achieve the common interest of more equitable and better prepared world to prevent, respond, and recover from pandemics. And 6, the best available science, which during COVID was never scientific at all. It was a lie, but okay, because the actual science and evidence proved complete opposite. And that's the shit that, I don't know, Moderna and Pfizer both wanted to try to legally lock down from the rest of the world and us people for 99 years. Unfortunately, they were forced to have to say that, because to not do that, because we the people said fuck that, and there was enough of us and we were aggressive enough that they didn't really have a choice. However, the compromise there was they, on their own schedule and time, get to release their own documents as long as they had the right to maintain their own schedule of when they'd release little teeny piece by little teeny piece over time. And of course, naturally, the governments of the world were like, sure, because they don't care, because they're right there with them. They're bought into power by people like the biopharmaceutical industrial complex and the military industrial complex. They're bought into power. Our votes don't matter. They never have. That's formality. That's fake. Representative. That's what that really means. Reality is they buy themselves into office, and more importantly, they're bought into office. They do the bidding of these corporations and these entities in order to make sure they get their seat of power, and then they maintain it as a puppet. And that's it. That's really how it works. It's obvious. You don't have to agree, but it's obvious. It's right in front of our faces. Article 4, pandemic prevention and surveillance. As if that's ever has positive connotations. Surveillance never has and never will have positive connotations. Only have negative, nefarious connotations. 1. The parties commit to take measures to progressively strengthen pandemic prevention and coordinated multi-sectorial surveillance, taking into account national capacities and national and regional circumstances. 2. The parties shall... I like how they don't specify what they're surveilling. Of course they keep that wide open and ambiguous. Duh. Because if they were specific and said, oh, just the pandemic potential and diseases, you know, that'd be what they'd claim as honesty, but then that would disallow them from doing what it really is, which is to track us. Like, oh, I don't know, have a database to track who's vaccinated and who's not, who's up to date and who's not, in order to ensure that the strength of the pandemic prevention and coordinated multi-sectorial surveillance ensures that nobody is allowed to not be up to date on all vaccines. The parties shall undertake to cooperate, A, in the implementation of the provisions of this article, in particular through enhancing financial and technical support to developing countries. Oh, so now you have to send even more of your tax money to other people. Great. As if that doesn't cause us enough problems that where we don't actually ever invest in ourselves. Our governments, our puppets, never put any money into us or what we need and want. No, they always put it into fucking wars and other military industrial complex endeavors and throw it at other nations during wars or to develop them, which, by the way, if you haven't noticed, has never ever worked. B. In support of relevant global and or regional initiatives aimed at preventing pandemics, in particular those that improve surveillance, early warning and risk assessment. Ooh. Promote evidence-based actions. You know, like you did all throughout the COVID pandemic, and literally they never worked, and the places who did not implement them or refused or revoked them pretty quickly suffered by far the least infections, and by far, even more so, the least deaths and mortality? Interesting. Sweden. Laboratory biosafety and biological risk management. Develop, strengthen, and maintain biosafety and biological risk management, in particular with regards to laboratories and research facilities, in order to prevent the accidental exposure, misuse, inadvertent release of pathogens consistent with applicable international and national standards and rules guidelines. That's a little on the nose, don't you think? But no, it came from bats that happened to fly like 1,000 miles or however hundreds of miles, whatever it was, to Wuhan meat markets, and then took a shit and somehow infected the food or the animals, which affected the food there. And that's how we got started. It couldn't possibly have been the obvious lab leak. No, that's totally bullshit, even though it's been proven so many times. Because you're so responsible, and these standards, guidelines, and rules are they're just impervious to mistakes. You know, I mean, like, you know, they never shut down those random Chinese labs in California because, you know, it's just, you know, those standards, man, they're just so inalienable, you know, unlike our rights, of course. Our rights are very alienable. Protect the safety and security of the health and care workforce, including through strengthening decent work conditions, addressing mental health and well-being. That ain't gonna happen, especially not in the United States. Who will know? That's long gone. Thank the Reagan administration for making sure that died out a long time ago. Then DEI and woke shit to make sure it never comes back because slavery or some shit. Ensuring priority access to necessary tools and supplies, including to pandemic-related products during pandemic emergencies, as well as addressing harassment, violence, and threats against health and care workers. Remember, it supposedly hates, according to Anthony Fauci, it's apparently factually correct. It's hate speech in his mind. It should have been made legally hate speech to question or naysay a single word that man uttered or told us and sold us and said and peddled. Not a single thing. You couldn't question him. You couldn't say anything because it was hate speech. And it was also supposedly dangerous misinformation and endangered so many lives. Because you didn't just listen to his every word and implicitly believe it automatically without questioning or self-thought, because that would be dangerous. You know, we can't think for ourselves anymore. That would be terrible. Probably. Just watch, because this is probably inevitably be implemented, and I bet it will somehow get so many people arrested just for standing up for their own rights that they've taken away here, and just basically being like, I don't have to adhere to this. It's for governments. It's not for us. We have no reason to listen to a damn thing that this agreement says. Address disparities, inequalities, discrimination, stigma, and bias, including issues related to gender. And here we go. In other words, LGBTQA 7,500 other letters, symbols and numbers and squiggles and other things, because I identify as a transsexual pony. Yay! And opportunities, such as barriers faced by women's with some ramens. Bitches in the dishes. To reaching leadership and decision-making roles within the health and care workforce, particularly during health emergencies, to support the meaningful representation, engagement, consultation, participation, and empowerment of all health and care workers. What does that have to do with anything? Are they qualified? Are they the most qualified? That's all that matters. Are you the most qualified? And do you clearly either have a passion for this, which is the best result, or at least do you have a great track record and a provable that you actually give a fuck about people and their health and their lives and their sanity? That's all that should matter with your qualifications. That's it. That's literally it. Not what your gender is, or your letter is, or your race, or your melanin count, or whatever else. That's the stupidest shit, dude. I don't even know how long this is. I'm only on page 8. I hate this so much because I have so much to say, as you can tell, and correlations to point out, important information to give, or perspectives to give. It's just like, this could go on for eternity. I probably should break this up multiple parts because I've already gone on for just under 2 hours. I'm 3 minutes under 2 hours right now. The parties commit to assist and provide financial and technical support within means and resources at their disposal to other parties in need. I love how vague this is. It's so ambiguous. Again, come on, man. I might just decide to say fuck this and just do a read through of the entire thing without any commentary from here on out. Like, I might just decide I'll do this. I'll leave this like minimally edited. Edit out the main parts that I don't need. We'll see what happens. I do know, guaranteed, I'm going to hold myself to editing this down to just the main reactive parts. There is still a chance that Alphabet Inc., aka Google, or YouTube, our overlords of Palo Alto, California, that know all, and of course know the difference between right and wrong, and good and bad sources, and good and bad information, and takes, and opinions, and what's dangerous and what's not, and we need to heed everything they say without hesitation, without thinking for ourselves, because that's what they want, and that's the rules of the internet, or something. I don't know. They are our overlords, so why not? Anyway, they probably will actually take whatever edition of this video I put up on YouTube down and claim that it violates their medical guidelines, medical and health guidelines. I guarantee just about they probably will. Even if I very carefully, selectively took out pieces that I mentioned anything about vaccines other than what they said and took those reactions out, they probably still would probably find some reason to take it down, which is so stupid, but it can be like an experiment. Um, and it would be kind of suckish though if I put the this up and then I did have it taken down and then they did decide to give me a strike because I believe that counts as a suspense, so you get suspended for like a week, I think, from being able to upload it all. It's some stupid BS like that because you violated their guidelines. Even though a lot of times they say that and they demand that, you could literally read through it. You can feed it back to them and be like, now, which part of this did I supposedly violate? Because you're telling me I violated this. And they won't tell you because they know that they're lying, but they just still want to give you, they still insist that they are right in their determination that you've violated it anyway. It's dumb. So we'll see what happens, but because of that, I do have a Rumble channel. I have not uploaded anything to it yet. This will be the first video I'll upload to it, though, for sure. So I'll have that linked in the description of this video below, along with the read-through. I will have it on YouTube, the read-through. The read-through obviously shouldn't violate anything. Who knows? But that will obviously also go up on Rumble anyway, even if it's just about guaranteed to be fine on YouTube. Again, the version of this that I'm saying is going up, goes up, and it does get taken down. I do end up suspended from it with a strike, with them doubling down on that. Then that part 2 is definitely going up onto Rumble as well. Anyway, it's fucked up shit. And if only what most people believe, that your vote actually counts and your voice matters, actually applied here and was actually able to be backed up, because obviously it ain't. May 27th through June 1st, people. Keep track.